everybody, and welcome back to Passion from Pain. This is Amy Pease, of course, the founder of Passion from Pain. And I'm so excited about today's episode. You all know I've been kind of talking about it on social media a little bit. Susan Anderson is with us today, and she is the author of the D.N.A. of Communion, a 75-day devotional exploring the power of communion and identity. And she does so much more and has such an amazing, powerful story. And I'm just so excited to have her here and share not only her story, but how she overcame everything and is now living in her purpose and deciding to share her experience with the world in the hopes of helping just one person get over the past, the pain from the past. You know, that's what we're all about here at Passion from Pain, is getting over that past pain, over the traumas and, all the bad things that we experienced in life, and letting it not define us any further, right? And just letting it become the tool, I guess, to move us forward, to propel us into our purposes and our passions. And so, Susan, welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and have this opportunity to share how I made it here. Yeah.
Absolutely. You and I had the pleasure of chatting a little bit, and I got to hear a good part of your story. Would you like to go ahead and share, what that is with the audience?
Sure. And let's see how brief I can make it, because it is quite a lot that has happened. I mean,
as much
I
as
think we
as
talked
much or as little
45
as you
minutes. Yes. So, um, I came from a life of dichotomies, I would say. And I always grew up growing up in a Christian home, but then also having a second side of my life, and this didn't stop. It just, like they say, like if you go off 1 degree in the beginning and you just keep going, you really end up dividing out quite wide. And really, my journey just kept me going in that way. And trauma after trauma. And of course, with every trauma, I think it tilts you a little more in those degrees so that it goes even more to the side.
It does.
Um,
Absolutely.
so literally, it was just one thing after another, one thing after another. And my mom would always joke with me, like, you are a cat that has 9 lives, and you're on and in this recent one, she was like, I think you might only have one more life left, like, can let's take care of you. So needless to say, as oh man, it's like, where to start, I'll start, with the fact of that I went throughout my life, and this is something I just, I ended up learning in my healing process, was trafficking myself,
Oh, okay.
which is something that is new, that people they don't look at it this way. But I realized through all my traumas that I believed and had come to believe that was my identity.
That the traumas were the
That
identity.
the traumas were my identity. Everything I'd experienced, first of all, I think we discussed this, like, everybody lives this way. All the sexual things, all of the deviance in any way, shape, or form, like, that this is how everybody lives, like, so I didn't know any different, and I set my identity as that.
I think a
And
lot of us who have experienced trauma can absolutely relate to that, and that's why we end up finding it so difficult to move past it, or to even think that there is a different life out there for us, because it it's all that we know, and it is our comfort. And it sounds weird, but it is the comfort, for us is the trauma. It's all that we know. We don't know any different.
And that's so true because I would often say, I hated the gray area. I either wanted to be
Yeah.
black or white. Like,
Hmm.
don't give me gray because I don't get that, and it actually scared me way
Hmm.
more to be in that gray zone of, like, "No, I'm either good or bad. I'm not
Hmm.
okay."
Hmm.
And that culminated into the most recent, which I will definitely share with you about, is I'm an occupational therapist,
Awesome.
and I was traveling throughout, well, mainly Florida. I didn't go anywhere else, but
Hmm.
had the opportunity to go to a facility where I ended up meeting a gentleman, another therapist, who I got really excited. I was like, wow, maybe this is somebody I could be in a relationship with. Not that I could ever, and did I ever make great choices in men, because
You're not alone.
you, we end up choosing what will continue the same pattern
Yep.
that we're comfortable with.
Yep.
So I was very comfortable with men who would use, abuse,
Hmm.
try to destroy, and kill me. Like,
Mm.
that was
Hmm.
what I comfortable with. But here I'm thinking I met another occupational therapy person, so this one is gonna be different. Yeah, no.
Hmm.
But the big flashing light above my head of, you know, oh, she'll fall for everything you have to say. Must have been
Oh,
going off
yep.
for him,
Yep. That's one
because
thing
we
about the abusers is they can absolutely read that on our face. They can read
for
it in our attitude and how we carry ourselves and, the tone in our voice. They can pick up on every bit of, weakness that they're looking for to take advantage of.
right.
It is like that
And
light, like you just said.
yeah, it's like the strobe light above our head.
Yeah.
And the crazy thing is, I had begun to believe that I had learned so well about how to
Mhm.
deal with this that I would be the one to hurt you before you hurt me.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah. Okay.
No, go ahead. I mean, it was always like I would have, if I saw
Yeah.
that somebody was gonna be heading that direction, it was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah. Oh, I know this,
Uh huh.
and I'll hurt you before you hurt me." And yet I was hurting nobody but myself, really.
Exactly. That's the realization we end up coming to going through our healing journeys and through our healing processes. And it's tough to come to that realization as well. It's the hardest thing to face. I absolutely remember coming to my realization, and man, did that hit me like a brick wall.
Yeah, yeah. Um, my brick wall was I met this man, I just dove in head first, and he had other plans for my life, which
Mm.
included trafficking me.
Oh.
Um, and like I said, I had trafficked myself in so many ways all my life. Never did I
Mhm.
think I would be able to fall for somebody who would end up trafficking me truly, like
Mhm.
in that, if by another person. The process ended up going on for, oh my goodness, almost a year, a little over a year maybe.
Wow.
And it went from me working, making very good money, to him having me living in my car,
Oh my goodness.
uh, with little to no contact with my family, having required tasks to do every day.
Mhm.
And really a progressively worsening, destructive goodness. I mean, I could give a whole bunch of adjectives for torture, the torture
Yeah.
that he really put me through. And, um, I forgot to tell you about this part. Like, my mom being a very strong believer, being a fighter for me throughout my life, I later ended up finding out that the night before the story that I'll tell you about, she went to her knees. She went to battle for me in prayer.
Oh, wow.
And she was like, I refuse to allow for my daughter to die. And she just
Wow.
fought in the spirit, praying. And it was the next day that my life changed for what some say the worst, but for me, the best.
So it's a weird
So
kind of dichotomy there, right? How that is a thing. The worst day is the best thing that ends up happening to us for some strange reason, changing the trajectory of our life and sending us,
completely.
giving us that wake up call that we needed because we weren't listening to the other signs that were out there. And I
Mm,
just love that point that you made right there. Just the worst day yet the best thing. And I just wanted to point that out because we go through
yeah,
that, going through the traumas and coming to those realizations. So
exactly. And sometimes it takes, I obviously in my case, it took coming to literally death's door.
mm,
So this gentleman gave me, I mean, he had taken everything he could,
mhm,
financially, emotionally, spiritually,
mhm,
taking me to depths that I'd never imagined to go to in that. Um, Really disconnecting me from everybody and anything I knew. I was no longer
mhm.
working as an OT because he had me working full time,
Oh
in
my
many
goodness.
different ways. And so the day came where he said, "Listen, we are done. We'll be able to," the mind games that he would play, of course,
Mm,
because he's they
mhm.
call that is it a malignant narcissist or some like that, like the worst, where
Yeah.
they don't even.
Yeah,
So
no, they don't.
he is the last thing we have to do, and then we can spend our life together,
Oh,
feeding off of my hunger and desire for this. Everything I've done was for the purpose of us having a life together. You
mhm,
always hung that like a carrot. Oh, we'll
mm,
get to do this, we'll do that, and we'll have all these wonderful everything. Because let me, a piece I must say that is so critical that I often forget to bring up. While he was grooming me in that
mhm,
beginning process, I began to share. I literally put out a banquet table of all my
mhm,
traumas, my life experiences,
mhm.
proving, like when I was younger and being involved in drugs. And he was like, "No, you weren't." And he was like, "Show me how to do this and show me how to do that." And,
Oh,
you know, so
mhm,
that he would have all this ammo. So if I can tell
mhm.
your, viewers, like, if you have somebody in your life who's wanting to know all your details, but not sharing their details, huge red flag. Huge
Absolutely.
flag.
Yep.
Go.
Absolutely, 1,000%. And I often talk about in a lot of the content that I put out, that oftentimes we end up divulging too much information, having gone through different traumas. It's just something that we do. We feel the need to let it out, vent, express it,
Mhm.
whatever, or the other end of it, we end up telling somebody who they need to be for us to be that perfect person in our lives. And then what they can do at that
Mhm.
point is play the role very, very well, and they
Yep.
will. And it's just another form of the manipulation. They're gathering as much info as they can, also while doing the love bombing, right? And then you're feeling like for
Mhm.
the first time in your life, you're being seen, you're being heard, and somebody's actually loving me, when in reality they've got that whole other maniacal plan that they're waiting to just get started. And so yeah, huge red flags were going off right there for you.
Yeah, and I didn't catch it.
Yep.
Here, this believing I'm an expert in how to do this and I'll manipulate you and yet I got caught right up in
Yeah.
that. And let me tell you that he used every single bit of the information I had given him to keep me under
Mm.
his total control.
Yeah.
And so, the love bombing, everything. I mean, and then it became so this last day comes, let me get into that.
Yep.
Last day comes that, we'll be able to have the rest of our lives, all the things we've been dreaming of. And he's like, so I want you to go commit this crime. A crime he had asked me to commit numerous other times. And I was always like, you have lost your ever loving mind. I'm an occupational therapist. I'm not going to go and commit that level of a crime.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, no, 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 I'm not doing that. What else do you want me to do instead? There was always something else I could do instead. In this
Mm-hmm.
point, there is nothing else.
No.
Either do this crime or I kill you. Well,
Oh my
he
goodness.
actually, let me say, he said, I will be so heartbroken that I will have to go out and do a murder suicide because I wouldn't be able to live without you.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, right.
Whoa,
Yeah,
whoa,
right.
what did
Like, he woulda
you?
killed me,
Yeah.
but he woulda just kept walking.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So, but I was so wrapped up in this man that I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen, and I don't wanna die, so
Well, yeah.
you know, okay, fine." And I later realized, like, that God removed the inhibition to do it because He knew this man would kill me. He
Wow.
had nothing to lose. He really had
Yeah.
nothing to lose. And so needless to say, I mean, he put me through so much torture of um, making me strip down, right on the like
Mhm.
literally on the side of the street. And this is one of those
Mm.
things where to this day I'm like, I know I saw cars go by. I know that there was a it was like a government car like go by, for something, whatever. Nobody
Mhm.
stopped. Here's this
Oh.
man is having me strip down to nothing at the back of my car so I could put on exactly what he wanted.
Mhm.
Like nobody stopped. Nobody did anything. Understandably, maybe, they thought, oh, she must have spilled something on herself and she's changing. Wow, she's
Mhm.
just changing right there.
Mhm.
Uh, but he had a gun on his lap.
Mm.
Why wouldn't I believe that he would do something,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So, needless to say, I took off. He followed me, and then he had me like write a note to do the crime.
Mhm.
Um, and I kept like pulling down my window and like, what about this? I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm so scared. And he's like, just go do it, and meet me over here.
Wow.
So I did the crime. Um, and went looking for him, drove off from this situation and
He just
um
left you there?
Yeah,
Wow.
he watched. Well, I believe no, he said he was going to our rendezvous point,
Okay.
and I didn't know that area very well, so it was kinda like,
Mhm.
the one where we always would sit?" "Oh, okay." So, I go commit the crime, I'm trying to get away, drive, doing all the things, trying to remember everything he told me to do,
Mhm.
and I cannot find him. I have no
Oh.
idea. And I'm just freaking out at this point thinking,
Well,
in
yeah.
my head, I've been connecting, like, what I just did. All I can
Yeah.
think about is I'm gonna lose out on my life with this man because I can't find him.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
I was so wrapped in that
Yeah.
insanity, I
Yeah.
didn't even recognize the severity of what I had just done.
Wow.
Um, so needless to say, I mean, all of a sudden I'm driving, looking for him, and a cop car goes by and flips around, and I'm like, "Oh no. Oh no.
Mhm.
Oh no.
Mhm.
Wait a minute. I've gotta find this man. I gotta find this man. This guy's gonna interrupt my finding this man." Like, I that's how, like so, they pull me over. I say, "You know, helicopter in the air, the road blocked completely,
Wow.
them holding AKs, AK-47, whatever, big, huge guns."
Oh my goodness.
Like, that did not freak me out quite as much as the gnarling dogs behind me, that I just was
Oh.
like, "Oh, please let those guys go." Um, yeah, I mean, that's honestly, like, the biggest piece of what I remember from it is those dogs. Um,
Yeah. Well,
but
I wouldn't wanna go up against them dogs.
I know, I'm like, the AK-47s, like, all that, like, I was like, in my head, I'm thinking that would kill me immediately, like, that's fine, but, anyway, so
Well,
I was arrested.
you're going through this and you're not worried so much about getting arrested, you're more worried about losing this life you were promised with him. Is that what you
Correct.
were saying? Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I was just devastated. Here, I've spent over a year
Mhm.
fighting for a supposed life I was going to have, going through hell.
Yeah.
Uh, uh just undescribable, literally
Wow.
undescribable. I experienced stuff that whew, even in the, like, witchcraft realm, in the that kind of stuff where,
Mhm.
like, I knew it existed,
Mhm.
but had never experienced. Um, it was to the
Mhm.
depths, very deep depths.
Wow.
And so again, now let me remind you, my mom had prayed the evening before because
Right, right.
She woke up with a dream that she got a call from the police department to come identify my body.
Oh my goodness.
And that's what made her get up and start praying against that.
Wow.
So here I'm arrested. I mean, and at one point in the cop car, like, it was a truck, but he drove the guy drove by, and I'm like, "That's him. That's the one that made me do it." And the cop didn't even pick his head up, didn't even look,
No.
didn't care,
Oh my goodness.
you know. So I'm there, they call my mom, of course, you get your one phone call. So I called
Sure.
they called my mom, and, all I they say, "Hello, this is the police department," or the sheriff calling, and all I hear is my mom screaming, "No, she
Uh,
can't be dead, be dead." And they're like, "Ma'am, calm down, calm down. Your daughter's here, she wants to speak with you." And, so it was a very I just remember getting on and she's like, "You're not dead, you're not dead." And I'm like, "No, mom, I'm talking to you, I am arrested." Um, so that started a process of a healing for me, honestly. It took quite a few months of being arrested. They had to
Mhm.
put me in the psych ward,
Mhm.
for 2 reasons. One, my safety. I was so freaked out. Um,
Mhm.
and still freaking out about this man. Like, sure, he was
Yeah.
gonna come and get me. I
Mhm.
was convinced he was gonna come get me. In fact, when we did the, um, arraignment, like, the first visit with the judge, my family was like, "You put this man's name down on the list, because if he does come get her, we want it that she cannot have any contact with him, and he cannot come get her." And, me and my, like, delirium, I wanna say, looked at
Mhm.
the paper and went, "You spelled his name wrong." You know, like, I even
Oh,
thank God.
well, and they weren't
And then
even
I was
looking for him in connection with the crime or anything?
no, never did.
Wow. Wow.
And he had always told me if anything goes down, it'll only be you that gets in trouble.
Wow. No, I'm so
And
sorry.
yeah, so needless to say, I mean, I learned so much. There were many different people in there, but I
Mhm.
also, would tell some of the things that he would have me do. Some of the, I guess you would call them incantations or different things.
Mhm.
And there were like Wiccan witch type people that studied that, and they go, "Oh yeah, that's this current,
Mhm.
and that's that, and this is why he did that, and the only way to, like." So I learned it. Yeah,
Wow.
I wasn't truly playing with the evil. Um,
Wow.
so um, I was down in the psych ward for quite a while. Then I got moved, and I mean, I kind of had started getting my head straight and getting back into relationship with God. Like, whoa, what's happening? How's this? My life is over. What am I gonna do?
Mhm.
Um, and I got placed in the only Christian dorm in the whole jail when I was moved upstairs.
Mhm.
God thing. And, God just began to show himself in so many ways in my life during that time. And, you know, the pivot point for me, I would say, was I was speaking with a girl that was there. She was there for life.
Wow.
And was there for court, had to come back from the prison and was there for court, running the Christian dorm kind of thing,
Mhm.
like doing all our studies, doing all that. And I'm like, what am I gonna do? Like, my life is over. I mean, what
Yeah.
else can I do? And there's a
Mhm.
statement she made that became my pivot point. And I often tell my mentees and the people I coach and this is God never allows anything to happen in our lives that will stop us from fulfilling his purpose for our life. So whatever we've been through, there must be something about what we're supposed to do that God brought us through it. Now I
Yep.
had to really work on that process and even accepting
Yeah.
that, because I had to also process, well, wait, God, like, if you love me so much, why did I have to go through those things? And
Always
I
the
re
biggest question we have, right?
Yep, yes, and the thing is
Like,
that
man, all of that was necessary, God, all of it? Yeah.
right, and that process ended up looking for me like,
Mhm.
first of all, it's the enemy that comes to kill, steal, and destroy.
Mhm.
It's not God.
Yep.
But God can take what the enemy chose to use to kill, steal, and destroy us to bring life and life more abundantly.
Mhm.
And he began to walk me through that process. And this is what I do as I'm working with people in my coaching program, is let's turn around and look at those experiences not from a woe is me, but wow, God,
Mhm.
look how you opened this door or that door, how you brought me through it and kept me alive, kept me in the midst of the chaos. And if we can look at that instead of, I can't believe I had to go through that, and we begin
Mhm.
to suck dry of the capacity we have because we made it through, it's life changing, completely life changing.
100%, 100%. Wow, that was so beautiful the way that you just put that. Oh my God, you got me coming to tears over here. But it's 100% true. Exactly, what ends up happening when God starts to intervene and we actually start to listen, because we don't
Mhm.
understand when we're going through our traumas. God's trying to intervene in our lives, but we're not listening. Either that, or we're not connected enough to our soul to even hear it. And when we are attached to an abuser, especially one like you were attached to, they end up disconnecting us from that part of us. And he had you going through, the whole witchcraft thing as well, and really trying to remove you from any kind of light that was within you, and which made it even more difficult for any of those messages to come through. And God love your mama. Mamas, they know when something is not right. And he spoke to her, and he knew that she needed to just start fighting for you. And I think that had a huge part in saving you through that whole process as well.
Mhm. And many have asked, like, why didn't your mom, if she loved you so much, why didn't she take you out of jail? Why didn't she bond you out or bail you out? She loved me so much to leave me there,
Mhm.
knowing I would have ended up with that man.
Yep. Absolutely.
The hardest,
Absolutely.
she said,
1000%.
yeah. And she has said that was one of the hardest things, leaving me there, but she was more afraid of really truly losing me.
Hmm.
And she's grateful now because all that I went through in that process we have such a closer than it's ever been relationship now. And she's seen the process of healing. And I didn't even think that I would the chance to even come back in her house. He had me steal stuff from her house, and he had
Mm.
me go and steal money, and I mean just crazy stuff. She'd had to change the locks at
Oh.
that during that. And I didn't even know if I was ever going to get back in that house. And I ended up living with her. I just moved away in December. I spent a few years, quite a few years living with her.
Mhm.
But so I want to share some of the different things that happened where God
Yeah.
just shined through.
Yeah.
So throughout the process of that being there, I'm growing in God, studying the Bible, really working
Mhm.
on my relationship with him, and understanding what I'd been through. And one of the
Mhm.
things he kept saying to me was, you are in my womb, you'll come out a different person. Now, mind you, with the crime I committed, I was looking at 15 years.
Oh,
If
wow.
they were to throw the book at me, it would have been 15 years in prison. And I'm thinking,
Holy.
okay, God, I'll definitely come out a different person in 15 years.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't. I mean, that whole process of being there is just,
Mhm.
I saw people who were waiting just to go before the courts and had been there 4, 5, 6 years in the jail,
Mhm.
just waiting
Wow.
before they
Holy
even
cow.
get sent. Like was crazy.
Wow.
So, you know, I mean, I could never understand how they would be waiting to get their sentence to go serve their sentence and be sitting there
Yeah.
for 5 years.
Yeah, that's
Torture.
insane. Yeah.
It's torture.
I thought there was laws
Uh,
against that kind of stuff, but
yeah, and I mean, and they
here.
say, we want to do this as quick and judicially
Yeah.
quick as possible. Really? 5 years?
Yeah, no, you know
Anyway,
that.
um, So he kept saying, "You're in my womb. You're gonna come out a different
Mhm.
person." And it was 295 days that I was in there. And
Wow.
I didn't recognize. I was just glad to be getting out. Needless
Yeah.
to say. I ended up getting 5 years of probation with the first year on house arrest.
Wow.
And um and then time served. But I had no history. I mean,
Sure.
you know, as far as they knew, I had never done anything else wrong. I'd never been arrested for anything.
You never been caught.
Um, never been caught, but
I get you.
but I mean, I had nothing in my record, nothing that would force them to do more. I
Sure.
did plead guilty. I did it. I
Mhm.
couldn't lie and say I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Um, but I was able to get out and start the next phase of my healing. And I was
Mhm.
out a little bit, and all of a sudden I heard God say, "Calculate 295 days, Susan." And it was 9.5 months.
Wow. How cool is that?
So he had been telling me, "You're in my womb. You'll
Mhm.
come out a different person."
Wow.
He knew the time he needed me there.
Yeah. How
You
profound.
know,
Oh my gosh.
it still gives me goosebumps,
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm
like,
getting them over here. That is
yeah,
crazy.
so yeah. And it just continued. This book that you see, scrolling across the bottom here, which I love, the
Yeah.
D.N.A. of communion was part of my healing process. He had me take
Right.
communion every day and meditate on him and where he wanted me to go and read and study and learn about my growth of
Mhm.
who am I really in Christ. And so he would give me the devotion for the cup and then a
Mhm.
devotion for the bread.
Mhm.
And I did actually more than 75, but then I was able to kind of, I kept it at 75, making the book. But when
Mhm.
I was done with that time frame, he was like, "Okay, now that you've healed so much, I want you to make that a book so other people can as well heal and learn what their identity in me is."
Wow.
And so I was kind of shocked. I thought this was him and I, like I was
Where's all these
this
other
was
people
not how
coming
it
from
worked.
now? This wasn't the deal.
Yeah, and I like, "You didn't tell me we were gonna do that." And he's like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
and
right.
would you have if you knew that? Because all the other books that I want to write, I haven't written yet."
Right.
So, but
Wow.
yes, that's what that book really is about, taking communion and really learning your identity in Christ. And
Oh.
that D.N.A. stands for divine and natural authority. But it has to come from the divine first.
Mhm.
And then from him, we get natural authority in this earth.
Wow, how
And
cool.
yeah, it's a very powerful book. It's very deep. Um, but it really is part of what helped me get through my healing journey.
Mhm. I bet,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. So what, made you really get over, the fear of putting this out there? I mean, that's gotta be kinda terrifying to, you know, have gone through this traumatic experience, and yeah, you've put the book together, but now it's time to go out there and, "Okay, everybody, this is what I did, this is what I was up to," and, how have you found the strength and the courage to, be able to talk about all this stuff now? A lot of people they can't they can't talk about it.
There was a point that God, I felt that that the Holy Spirit had said to me, listen, just as when you were arrested, they said you have the right to remain silent.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt God saying, I do not give you the right to remain
Oh,
silent in what I've brought you through. There
wow.
are others out there who need to hear that no matter how deep and dark their trauma is or that they are in, that there is life after trauma, but there
Yeah.
is a healing process. And that's also what caused me to create my Living Beyond the Cross.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a ministry, yes, but it's
Mm-hmm.
learning this concept of how when we give our trauma over to God and we
Mm-hmm.
go through it and see how he's weaved literally,
Mm-hmm.
like there's a book called The Scarlet Thread where it shows how Jesus was weaved through the whole Old Testament.
Mm-hmm.
But when we look and we're able to see that scarlet thread through our life, that is what is so powerful. And then
Wow.
we can begin to break through Jesus, break the bonds to that past and
Mm-hmm.
move forward in walking beyond the cross with
Mm-hmm.
Jesus in a place of freedom, no shame, no burdens. When we turn around, we just see the cross. We don't see what
Wow.
we did. We
Mm-hmm.
see that Jesus took it all on at the cross 2,000 years ago.
Wow.
He knew,
Yeah. And he did.
you know?
Yep.
And so that empowered me to say, it is not I that live, but Christ that lives in me. So
Mm-hmm.
what I did, nobody gets to hold that against me.
It's
They can
beautiful. I
they
love it. I love it.
they need to deal with Jesus because he took that on already. If you have a problem
Absolutely.
with me,
Love it.
go deal with Jesus, you know?
I love it. I love it. I think you've got a few taglines there for some really cool T-shirts too that you could, sell on your platform along with your book. I think that
Oh,
would be
yeah, that's
great.
a good idea. Yes.
I like that. You got a problem with me? Talk to Jesus. That would be a great T-shirt. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. You wanna bring up my past? Let me tell you about Jesus, you know?
Exactly. Exactly.
Um
Exactly.
So, can I very quickly just tell you how God
Yeah.
has restored all that has been lost that I thought was
Yeah.
lost. So,
I'd love to hear it.
um, I did my 1 year of house arrest, completed all the requirements that I had to do during that time very
Yeah.
quickly. Honestly had to go through a deliverance, which we could go through a whole nother section on talking about what that was like.
Yeah.
But, the whole nother subject. But, I then, begin they ended up dropping my 5 years down to 3 years. But
Wow.
then I had to wait 3 years from that point, doing, living with no issues, nothing coming up, being off probation, but can't work, can't do anything really because
Mm.
I couldn't as an OT. I now had a crime on my record.
Yeah.
Um, and so waited 3 years and then started the process to fight to get a waiver, as they call it here in my state, Florida.
Mhm.
Um, and went through that process and ended up they were like, "Susan, you need to get back to work. You need to
Mhm.
go back to work." This was
Wow.
a horrific situation that happened that so they gave me the waiver
Well,
and
that's fantastic.
all different ways. So now I'm back working as an occupational therapist, something this man said you will never be an OT again.
Oh, yeah, no, he don't know.
Yep. And
How awesome is
what?
that? How phenomenal that they gave you the grace on that and gave that
And
back.
that's
That
the thing
that's
that
phenomenal.
exactly, and, and that's the thing is that, we'll look and say how much we feel like we've lost time, we've
Mhm.
lost so much, I mean, I look at the fact I'm 51 and
Mhm,
I never, had children, and with all that happened, now I can't.
mhm.
But it's like it's okay. I get the opportunity and the freedom at this point to, in so many ways, to make a difference in the lives of others. I've lost a
Well,
lot, but God
exactly.
has restored so much.
Exactly. You get to, mother those lost souls that are going through this or coming out of this, and
Exactly.
you get to help on that level that, nobody else gets an opportunity to really do that. And so that's a truly unique calling that is, just yours. Absolutely just yours. And it's an amazing gift that,
Right.
you were given for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well,
And I
wow, your story's amazing.
No, thank you so much. It's been a powerful journey. I feel so honored and at the
Yeah.
grace and the mercy that God has shown me.
Mhm.
And I often work with women that I call it, complex trauma.
Mhm.
Um, there's a trauma is trauma. I'm not
Yeah.
negating any kind of trauma.
Mhm.
Um, but there's a difference between like a car accident trauma
Mhm.
that just happened versus since I was 5 years old, this has
Mhm.
been going on kind of thing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There is a difference.
Yep.
Um, and I wanna share one thing that I've come to realize, and then I know, I could talk for hours, but we don't
I
have
could
all that
listen for
time.
hours. Oh
We'll
my
have to
goodness.
do a
You
part
you can
2.
do
Um,
it.
but, this sounds horrible in some ways, but just hear me out, is that
Yeah.
I almost get a little bit excited when I start working with somebody who has
Mhm.
had trauma since childhood.
Mhm.
And here's my reason why. Because we were known by God before we were even put in the womb, right?
Mhm.
Well, the enemy also knew who we were.
Mhm.
He was there when we were in heaven. This is
Mhm.
deep, okay? But when we come out, I believe that there are some of us that the devil was like, "Whoa, oh crud, she made it to Earth." Like, I know what her calling is, right?
Yes.
And he figured it
I'm
out.
that yes. Yes.
He's like, "Oh boy, okay, she made it. We
Here
didn't
we
get
go.
to stop her." And we get a target on our back.
Yeah.
And if we can change even that perspective, like
Mhm.
that that's all the torture, the pain, the traumas that we went through from so young was the enemy knowing that there is a call on our life that is so incredibly powerful and pivotal for
Mhm.
everybody, this world, this time, that we're here at this time. Like, if we can recognize and say, who I need to be angry at is the enemy, because
Mhm.
he's been trying to take me out since day one, because
Yep.
he knows who I am. Now it's my turn to find out who I am and why was he trying so hard to destroy me, using people
Exactly.
to destroy me. If we
Exactly.
can change the dial of our mind to that perspective,
Mhm.
that's a pivot point,
No,
because now
absolutely.
um,
Absolutely. So many people have it wrong, they wanna ask, "Why did God put me allow all this bad stuff to happen to me?" "Why did God allow that? Why does he allow the evil? Why does God allow, all of this?" And they're absolutely looking at it wrong. It's not that he's allowing it, he's helping you through what, the devil and the demons are putting you through.
Exactly.
They
And,
don't
you
look at
know,
it like that.
there's a scripture that talks about, he gives us the choice of life or death, wanting
Yeah.
us to choose life because he
Yeah.
gave us free choice.
Yep.
So sometimes we do choose death. Sometimes it
Yep.
is our choice.
Yep. Oh yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
me doing drugs was not somebody else doing that to me. Me
Oh no. Yeah.
sleeping with somebody was me doing that.
Mhm.
But in the midst, he never left me. He never
Yeah.
forsake me. He was there and trying to get me back on track, like we said earlier,
Yep.
you know. But if if we can get to that point, and then, even for me, I went through counseling like you cannot believe. I probably spent hundreds of thousands, I feel like. Maybe, I don't
Mhm.
know. I never kept track. But a lot of money on counseling.
Mhm. Mhm.
And all it ended up doing was re-traumatizing me,
Yeah.
'cause they
Yep.
they wanted me to go through every trauma in detail, and then they'd analyze it, and then
Mhm.
they would make me think of stuff I didn't even think about. Now I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I'm
Yeah.
now even more traumatized."
Right.
And when it they're valuable, maybe for the
Mhm.
basic,
Sure.
like that kind of thing, but when you're dealing with this complex trauma, I
Mhm.
ended up, for me, finding, and even when I guide my mentees and the people I coach and different people, it's, I am going to guide you to Jesus,
Mhm.
who was there with you.
Yeah.
Let him, how
Mhm.
can we let him show you from his perspective?
Right.
And he will never re-traumatize you. In fact, he'll show you
Exactly.
capacity. He'll show you his
Exactly.
love, his protection
Mhm.
in ways that we may not have seen it.
Oh yeah. And
Um, it's a powerful, powerful process. And honestly, in reality, I feel like it's a faster process.
I think you're
Once we're
right.
really,
I
you
think
know,
you're right. You know, absolutely. I went through the counseling and everything too, and I think their hearts are absolutely in the right place. They read all the books, but I think so often the biggest thing that is missing is that most of the time the counselors haven't lived through something. They haven't
no,
experienced it necessarily.
no,
And you could do all the reading you want, but until you've lived through something that is traumatic, you know,
mm-hmm,
you're never really going to be able to make that connection that's really gonna
exactly,
help somebody.
exactly,
And like you said, it's good. It has its place, absolutely for sure. But there's just some things that it can't do and help with. I believe anyway. And that was
yeah,
my experience, your experience, and I've heard it from so many other people, which is why they're
yeah,
looking for alternative ways to go through this on their own. And that's why
mm-hmm,
I went through my alternative way of going through this on my own because the mental health system, ended up failing me for sure. Um,
yeah,
but and it does take that you have to have that spirituality side to it. It's not just all about the clinical side. You've got to address the spirituality side, and you've got to get that connection with your soul, and you've got to get that connection with God and with Jesus, and get it all right with Him. Because if you don't, it's not going to work itself out with you. It's
mm-mm,
not.
no. And there truly is a freedom beyond trauma. There
Oh yeah.
truly is. And there is
Mhm.
a place, I mean, I want to tell your viewers, like, you may feel like I'm never I'm never going to be able to forget. I I'll be honest, there are things that I have to make myself now remember from my
Mhm.
past because
Yep.
the chains are broken. They don't
Mhm.
have a they don't have a hook in me anymore.
Yep.
And I have to sometimes I'm like, "Holy Spirit, help me to remember because I wanna minister to somebody or help them," and I'm like,
Yep.
"Okay, take me back there."
Mhm.
momentarily so that I have the words of wisdom that, God, you want them to hear. Not my let me compare
Yeah.
story, but what you taught me as you healed me through that.
Mhm.
Um, but I never thought that there was a place of authenticity where I didn't
Mhm.
have to have a dark side and a light side, and
Mhm.
never should they meet, like
Right.
I know that there is a place where I can that was one of my prayers in jail was like, if anything, God, I just want to be done with a double life.
Mhm.
I'm tired. 30 plus, almost 40 years of living a double life. I was tired.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can I just be authentic? But there's no secrets. I don't have
Mhm.
to worry about any of that. And living in that is a peace that passes all understanding. Like it truly is. And I still have my bad days. I still have difficult
Oh,
days.
yeah.
I still have, we're gonna,
Mhm. We're
but I
human.
have
It's
tools.
Mhm.
Yeah. I
Absolutely.
now have, and and I tell you the motivation and the excitement that I get whenever I get to see somebody else's progress
Oh, yeah.
through
Right?
this healing journey, the ahas that come
Mhm.
to them, and seeing them come from this place of like, I don't even want to tell you what I had to do to, you know
Yep.
what, this happened, and I'm like,
Yep.
holy
Yep.
that,
It is the most rewarding thing.
and it makes everything I went through worth it, you
Yep.
know? Um, it is such an honor to be able to be a vessel now,
Yeah.
to talk about
That's awesome.
the power of redemption
Mhm.
and the transformation that, as I say, I'm a trauma healing and transformation expert. We joked, I said to you, I'm like, expert, and it's earned
Yep.
authority.
Oh, yeah.
Earned authority,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
like,
You have got experience that, most other people who call themselves experts and authorities, don't.
no,
It's that
they
lived
call it that
experience.
from books. Well, I've
Yep.
read about all these
Yeah.
traumas and I've read this and I'm an expert now. Yeah, let me have you walk through one of the traumas I've been through and tell me your expert book knowledge
Yep.
is
Yep.
gonna help you through that.
Exactly. Exactly. A completely different education. And,
Yeah.
I 100% choose the one who's got the life experience over the one who's, done just the reading.
Exactly.
They've got good intentions. I get it, but for me anyway, that's the understanding that I've come to, through my own healing journey as well. And, you've learned going through yours, and you went through, the mental health system as well.
Mhm.
And it was the same thing, it was it it had its place, but it couldn't take you all the way.
No.
And so
Even
that's what we can do.
and even the judicial system,
Mhm.
and I'll be honest with you, the church system.
Mhm. Oh, yeah.
I cannot I can't count on, I mean, it's probably at least 5, 6 churches where I went and
Mhm.
sought help and I was asked to leave.
Oh, how sad. It's sad because
Or,
I know it's so true.
they didn't know how to handle,
Yeah.
though that's where I went to get
Mhm.
help.
Mhm.
And I even had to work through that
Mhm.
process of church abuse,
Mhm. It's
of
a thing.
all the
It's a
characters,
thing.
so many types of abuse.
Mhm.
And we go to those systems that we think are gonna help, and they just abuse us back, and,
Oh,
it's been a process, and I had to learn, you know what? They're people too.
Yeah,
And many of
exactly.
those I ended up finding out later, I triggered them because they
Mhm.
were doing what I was doing behind the scenes.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And that's one of the biggest things that I want people to take away from this too is, you don't give up on yourself, you don't give up on your healing just because something isn't working out right. It doesn't
Mhm.
fit, you know, or it's not taking you in the direction that you thought or think it should be taking you. Don't give up. There's so many other directions to go. And if you've got to go it alone, you know, go it alone and seek out the information online and do your meditation and do your prayer and connect with
Yeah.
that spiritual side, and the answers will come to you. And that's how I ended up having to do it, was on my own, same way, doing the research, doing the introspection, reconnecting my soul, reconnecting with God. And that's what it took. Everything else, was a big waste of my time, essentially. But that's what it really took. So if it's not working out for you, do not give up on yourself. You are absolutely
Mm.
redeemable. You are
Yes.
absolutely healable. You just got to keep looking for the right thing, and absolutely understand that you are dealing with other humans who have other problems, and most of the time they're wearing their masks as
Yeah.
well. And you're triggering them, and they don't know how to
Exactly.
handle you. And that's okay. That's okay. That's not on you. That is on them. That is on their soul. That is on their spirit. That is on them to deal with. Not on you. You just go find the next thing and try and keep trying because it's there. It's there. You just got to find it.
And that made something just came up in me is to say, I went through a rehab for sex addiction.
Mhm.
And one of the processes that they had us do was sit there and recognize where the shame belongs. Because as people who have gone through trauma, will take
Mhm.
on the shame of
Oh yeah.
everybody else.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So when I was kicked out of a church group for
Mhm.
addictions and things like that because they didn't know how to handle me, and I started saying, "Well, I'm shameful."
Mhm.
And it took going through a process of saying, "No, shame, if shame belongs anywhere, shame on
Mhm.
them
Mhm.
for not for having that for kicking me out, for not
Yeah.
embracing and saying, "We'll get through this together."
Right.
But it took a lot to learn where does shame actually belong.
Mhm.
And I hate to say this in a as a believer, but it's like um shame is really that sh word on yourself,
Mhm.
smearing that on you,
Yeah.
and wash off from we have
Yep.
to wash off from all the shame that others put on us as well as what
Yes.
we carry,
Yes. Yes.
and recognize shame is not a badge we get to carry.
Exactly.
We get to carry the badge of honor and
Mhm.
glory and grace and mercy and purpose. Just as you say this, like the
Mhm.
passion from our pain,
Mhm.
we don't have to be shameful of the what we've been through. We
Nope.
made it through.
100%. Yep.
We made it
Absolutely.
through,
Absolutely.
you know? So, I so appreciate this time with you. My goodness. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, we could talk for hours.
Oh,
Like I
we could.
said, we may have to do part 2,
I'm open to
like,
it. I am open to it. We can absolutely do that.
anything that comes up, because there is definitely way more to this story.
Okay.
But,
So we'll tease a part 2 for the listeners. We'll tease a part 2. We'll
yeah,
get it. We'll get
she's a
another one
part
recorded
2.
here soon. Right?
even then, hey, I would love to maybe do a group
Yeah.
thing, if there's a couple that would like to come in and,
Mhm.
say I love the challenge of, like, put me on space, like, put me on point
Yeah.
right here, like, "What about
Yeah.
this
Nice
questionnaire?"
for you.
Questions. I love it.
I love it.
I
I
love
love it. I love it. I love your spirit. I love that you have found your passion from the pain in your life.
Yeah.
You've found the strength after the toxicity, and you're living in your purpose, and you're shining, and you're going to do some wonderful things with that. I know that you are. And we're definitely going
Yeah.
to do a part 2. And thank you so
Woo!
much for being here. Do you want to
My
mention
pleasure.
really quick where everybody can find you? I will put everything in the description, all the links, when
Yeah.
this does post, but real quick, mention where everybody can find you.
I do have a Facebook page, for Living Beyond the Cross.
Mhm.
You may find it under Susan Anderson dash Reborn. Um, I also have, you can reach me by email at livingbeyondthecross@gmail.com. And, I'm in the process of growing a lot of the other, parts of it, but I am available for coaching. Um, if you, and even if you want to just have an intro meeting to just see if we are a good fit,
Mhm.
definitely open to that. And that can be, I'll make sure you have that link to I think it's in there to schedule it on the calendar to meet up with me.
Yeah, I have the
And
book a meeting with Susan link right here. I'll put that in there. Yeah.
perfect. And and then we'll go from there. But
Mhm.
I look forward to helping anyone that has gone through traumas and they don't know how to even see past the traumas. One of
Mhm.
my favorite statements that I say is, we have to learn to see beyond what we see.
Mhm.
And that's a huge part of what I do, is learning to see beyond what we just see right here. So I would be honored to work with anyone who just feels stuck,
Yeah.
and you don't know how to find the freedom that you see that Amy and I are walking in.
Mhm.
And
It's beautiful over
it's
here.
there for you. Think, don't believe any lie of the enemy that you can't have this freedom, because it's
You
available for
can.
everyone.
Absolutely. There's no greater truth has been spoken, because here we are, we lived it, and we're on the other side of it. And, yeah, we have bad days still sometimes, just like anybody else, but the difference is we know how to get over it. We know how to pull ourselves through. And so I love it. And like I said, I love you. I love your energy. And thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Thank you
And thank
so
you,
much. I love
listeners,
you
for
too.
thank you,
I'm
everybody,
so
for joining.
appreciative. Yes.
I love it. I love it. Thank you all for joining.
Yes.
And
Love
then
it.
with
Love
that,
it.
we'll see you in the next episode. And we'll see you later,
Yay.
guys. Thank you.
Thank you.